I'm Mark Robertson. Welcome to a very special episode of VI Sports. We'll be featuring the 2016 Sports Hall of Fame inductees. We're actually at the Save On Foods Memorial Center, home of the Sports Hall of Fame. And joining us is Lois Smith, who is chair of the selection committee. Thanks for being with us.
Pleasure to be here.
First of all, Lois, I have to say, I came out from Ontario a couple years ago, and I have been amazed at the quality of sports talent here on the island in virtually every discipline.
Victoria has a long and wonderful heritage in sport, going right back to the 1920s, through the UVic basketball dynasty of the 80s. And in part, it was the sport environment that enabled us to host the 1994 Commonwealth Games, which in turn gave a tremendous impetus to sport as it is now in the community.
And a great example of the quality of athletes coming from Vancouver Island, I think, is this past 2016 Olympics in Rio.
Oh yes, once again, island athletes distinguished themselves in competition.
We had a couple silver medalist scullers.
Oh yes, Lindsay Jenrich and Patricia Obi making the very first appearance in an Olympic Games, women's rugby, and the Canadian women's sevens based right here in Victoria brought home a medal. It's the list just goes on and on.
And we have some amazing facilities as well. Obviously, top-notch rowing club. There's a velodrome where Olympic hopefuls train. We have a world-class BMX track. I mean, again, that list kind of goes on and on, which is pretty neat.
Well, yes, and of course, once you've got the facilities, you can attract the best coaches, and once you've got the best coaches, you can begin attracting more and more of the best athletes. And they act as an inspiration to the local youngsters coming up. The local youth see what can be done and see what they can achieve. And the whole sporting culture just continues to grow.
Here's the tough question. How do you select the inductees for the Sports Hall of Fame?
With great difficulty. You've got to understand we're fishing in a very well-stocked pool. And we have a list of approximately 300 potential candidates. We get at least a dozen new nominations every year, and we induct 9 a year. So it can be a lengthy wait for an athlete or a team, a coach, an official, an administrator, a sponsor. It can be a while before they're actually inducted.
But you know what? That's a good problem to have, because again, it's just a statement on the great talent here on the island.
Oh, and this is true. And we do a fairly lengthy process. If anybody thinks they know a worthy candidate, they can go to our website, www.gvshof.ca, and click on the inductees tab, and under there you'll find the nomination criteria and the nomination application form.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Lois.
Thank you.
Now we're going to have a look at the 2016 inductees.
My sporting experience started on Cooper Street at the middle of the one block that we lived on, and all the kids played hockey and soccer and everything at that one spot. I tell you, I was just the kid that kept begging everybody to play for a little bit longer or to skip their homework and come play. And if they wouldn't come play, my mom has a few pictures of me throwing a football to myself, which I liked sport right from the beginning. I was inspired by Canadian Olympians, and I was inspired by the idea of seeing the Canadian flag fly high and hearing the anthem, and that became the mission.
I remember running past the grandstand at 5K, and he was probably in 5th or 6th at that point. And I was like, oh, this is looking pretty good. And he runs by the grandstand, he puts his hands up in the air, and he's like this to the crowd. And part of me was like, wow, he's really in the moment and really loving this. And then the other side of me, the coach, was like, maybe you should refocus a little bit and get going.
I'd already played it out that many times. It was all scripted in my head. I was just expressing something I'd already seen. And so, it was special. It was special, and there was a little bit of magic there. 3 years into being in Victoria, I had a new sense of this place because it welcomed me back with a gold medal that I got to share with the community, an incredible community.
The stuff that he did personally for a lot of the younger athletes that were coming up, whether it was personally inviting them to come out to Victoria to train with him and to be a part of the squad, taking him aside and giving them a few words of wisdom or tips. He helped find them sponsors. He'd help get them to training camps overseas. He really went over and above and beyond as far as just his role as sports star and leader, and really was a mentor to a lot of the young guys who are now racing on the national team.
To the city of Victoria and the people of Vancouver Island, that they supported in such a huge way the endeavors of this this ridiculous kid from Kingston who liked to run around in a Speedo. That's the opportunity to do that is everything.
I started playing soccer for Boys Club, the Boys and Girls Club, back down by Central Junior High School where my dad was a teacher. And I always played a year ahead of myself on my brother's team. And it wasn't our team, it was me playing on his team. And that carried through all the way through my youth soccer. And that was okay, I mean, that was fine. It just, created a perseverance and stubbornness in me that I apparently needed later in life.
As a player, some of his friends tell me about how he wasn't the biggest guy out on the field, but he played pretty big. He's the little guy up front who you don't want to play against. He wasn't the nicest guy on the field, I heard, but he definitely got the job done. I played on the Canadian national team on the youth team. So you start to figure out that, even though you were the third or fourth best player in your house, that wasn't so bad. And then I started to get invited to the BC team and the Canadian team, and I just got tremendously strong and tremendously fit and played at a level that I hadn't played at before. And then it all just kind of went south. March of '86, when the doctors came to me and said, "Man, that's it. We can't do anything. You need a heart transplant or you're going to die." And so you're like, wow. And it was only later, and much later, 25 years later, that I really sort of came to grips with it and said, you know what? I am the heart guy. I mean, that's just the way it is. I can fight it all I want, but maybe I can do something a little bit bigger. And I decided to really get engaged in the space, the organ donation and transplantation space, and not just be some guy on the periphery that, sort of cut ribbons and stuff like that. I really wanted to learn about it, so I did. He didn't want to be the heart guy, and now he's kind of embracing it and using it to set himself on a platform to spread awareness. It's just kind of like, wow, he's something special.
We're making great strides in the U.S. and starting to see that in Canada, and it's exciting because, you're literally saving people's lives, getting them off that list.
Randy and I started working together at about 13 years old, so he was used to working with university athletes, and we were kind of loudmouth 13-year-olds, but Randy was 100% invested in us, and I think it didn't matter if you were trying to make the Olympics or you were trying to make a provincials. He was invested in you.
That was his first and foremost. It was never about Randy, it was always about his athletes and how to make them better and make them the best that they could be. It was so easy to support him. He loved what he was doing, and he had that good balance of doing his job at work and loving it, and being at home and being a family man, and that was huge to him.
It was always business here, but I knew when you'd get home, it'd be like, hey, you want to go play hockey, you want to go play catch, and he'd always be fun dad. He was always just kind of like a big little kid, and it's awesome.
When he passed away, I remember all I wanted to do was just swim and just be with myself, I guess. Because you're with your thoughts in the pool. Definitely hard to swim at a meet like this, a big meet, yeah. Wore me down a little bit, but I podiumed in 1500 freeze, so that was pretty awesome. It felt pretty good.
The outpouring of support when Randy passed away was pretty incredible, and it not only the Olympic side of athletes. I mean, he did have the biggest influence on some of our recent medalists, but more importantly, all the kids I grew up with who have come pretty successful at everything that they've done, outside of the pool, inside of the pool, and I think that's kind of the testament to Randy, is that it wasn't about making your goal to the Olympics, it was about how to make you the best rounded person.
He was always very involved in the swimming community here, and I think even some of the little kids knew my dad and were aware of him, and I thought that was really cool that they could pay their respects to him as well. Even if they didn't, have a direct connection with him, they just knew of him and his influence and his legacy here. You had to put trust in my dad that he was going to do the right things to make you the best you could be, and I always had that trust in him as him being my dad, and I really do think he made me the best I could be.
Very, very proud of him still.
I'm the youngest of 5, and I've got 4 older brothers, so I sort of naturally fell into sport more as a matter of survival than anything else when I was a kid. Field hockey came to me, sort of introduced to it a little bit in late elementary, and then in junior high, and then through high school, where I really was like, this is pretty cool, because we went from road hockey. We played a ton of road hockey, as most good Canadian kids do, and you know, it just seemed to be sort of a natural transfer. And you know, as I played through high school, went through the regional program here in Victoria, and then opportunities to play provincially just sort of opened up from there.
Very tenacious, very determined, extremely skilled with her stick work. When she played on the national team with me in '83 and '86, she was in the backfield and a stalwart in the backfield. Nothing went by her.
I was very lucky to get on board with the national team at a really pinnacle time, and just a mediocre rise for them. And at that stage, you know, Olympics was not even anything that was on my radar. So to all of a sudden be thrust into that sort of Olympic stage was really phenomenal.
Even when Nancy was a junior member on the team, she was still a leader on the field. From the backfield, she was not afraid to speak out and, you know, say to people, you should be doing this, you should be doing that kind of thing. And then '87, Pan Am Games, that was the first time I think women's field hockey was in the Pan Am Games, and Nancy was chosen as the flag bearer, which shows the respect that not only her team had for her, but the rest of the Canadian contingent.
It was an incredible honor, of course, and I mean, it's one thing to wear the jersey, but then to carry the flag to represent your country and that body of athletes and coaches and support staff was obviously a very high point in my athletic career, and having my parents there at the opening ceremonies made it, you know, the icing on the cake for sure. I've had the privilege of coaching both of my daughters through junior league and high school, and I still get to play with my youngest daughter in women's league here. So yeah, it's a sport that I think will probably always be near and dear to my heart, and hopefully I'll, you know, keep my hand in it at some point until I leave this earth.
It was my father that suggested that I give rowing a try. I was quite tall for my age. Being on the water, in the boat, moving, the way the sport moved, the environment of the sport was great, yes. And I was drawn to it straight away. As an athlete, the highest I reached, we won the Commonwealth Games in 1958, and in those days it was a big event. I mean, we were racing against Olympic medalists, and so to win that was quite a prestigious thing to do. And then as you gradually get older, you turn to help other people and become a coach.
You could get here at 6:45 and he would have been here at 6:42, right? And no matter how hard you were working, you always got a sense that Mike was working a little bit harder.
When I went to Canada, I found that there was a reluctance to want to train, not because of a lack of commitment or motivation, but because they believed that was the failure of the 1988 boat. So when I started to train even harder than they trained before, then there was objections.
He doubled our training program. Quick and simple. I was asked to row 20 times a week. I didn't think it was physically possible to row that much. But you know, it was the right program. It was the right kind of training program. I think we all bought into it, and we all encouraged one another to raise our game.
Within 3 or 4 months of training at the high level, they almost won the World Championships. To do so well so quickly just showed their determination and their ability as people and as athletes.
Unquestionably, the 6 years that I spent being coached by Mike Spracklin were the highlight of my career. He took a talented athlete who was a pretty good competitor and turned her into a world champion.
That's what drives the coach, that's what motivates the coach, isn't it? You ask an athlete to do something and they respond and do it, it's motivating as well. It's a two-way thing. The coach has to be motivated by the athlete, just as the athlete is motivated by the coach.
My dad died when I was 8, and so my mom had 3 kids, and that really prompted the move out to Victoria because my grandparents were out there. So I came from a town of 1,500 people in Alberta. So for me to go to Victoria, it was paradise.
One of my earliest memories of him at that age was seeing him standing at a bus stop, this little guy carrying this great big hockey bag and his stick. You know, how many people would be so dedicated to playing that sport and love it so much that at 10 years of age they'd carry a bag that was bigger than them onto the bus and make their way to practices without having anybody else responsible for it. He took that responsibility himself.
I saw the Sarajevo Olympics in 1984 on TV, and for me, actually playing in the Olympics was more the pinnacle rather than playing in the NHL. And then I got drafted from Notre Dame to the Calgary Flames. And that year that I got drafted, I went to the summer camp of the World Junior program. And I managed to make that team, and we went to Helsinki. We ended up winning the gold medal, and then the next year in Saskatoon, and had another wonderful experience, and we won the gold medal again.
I was working with the national team out of Calgary, and it was the year we were getting ready for the Olympics in '92. We were going to Albertville, France. And I can remember going to the first fitness testing as the camp opened, and there was Kent.
I remember skating on that first time. Then you see the Olympic rings, and I just remember skating out there, and you just can't help but thinking of all the effort and the amount of work that it went to being there and being part of something special. It was a really emotional time for sure.
Probably the most important person to him all the way along was his mom. And she just did such an awesome job of just helping shape him and guide him and shepherd him to becoming the kind of guy he was.
A single mom and raised 3 kids, and there were no questions. She was just always there for me, and there's always bumps along the road, and she was fantastic. I just want to do the same thing for my kids.
My whole life has been sports. And my grandpa built a rink for me in the backyard in Saskatoon, and I started skating when I was 2. And I've been on ice ever since. We were in ice capade skating our life away, and that's where we met. I joined in 1957, he joined in '58.
I auditioned on a dare out of the old forum and in Vancouver, and I didn't anticipate to be a figure skater, but turned out all right, and I enjoyed it. It was a great life.
Once we became an item in ice capades, we knew we didn't want to stay on the road forever. So we left the show. We'd had enough traveling, and John worked for the PNE in Vancouver, and then a job came up in Victoria in 1965, and luckily us, we got to come here and live.
I was a rink rat since they built the barn in 1949. My mother sold tickets there, and so I lived in the arena and naturally got to meet John and Marilyn in the mid-60s. You could always find Marilyn and John at any sporting event in Victoria, and always supportive. And I don't ever recall Marilyn ever turning us down on any requests. John, maybe.
I enjoyed my work and enjoyed what was happening in the facility, you know, whether it was a rock show, a hockey game, or a basketball game. But when you look around the Save-On Food Center and see all the various plaques and the history of sport in Victoria, it's amazing, and it's such a great honor to be a part of it from the very start.
It was our payback to sports of what we've had all our life, and that's something John and I both enjoyed, so it's been a whole part of our life.
I don't know of a single person that in this community that has not benefited from the largesse of John and Marilyn over the years. Doesn't matter what it was, where it was, or who they were always welcome at the Bates.
I'm just grateful that we've got married and resided in Victoria, and it's the greatest place in the world. We've done a lot of traveling in our lives, and this is still the best place to be, right in Victoria, BC.
And I love sports, and my mom kept saying, get outside, play, and so I enjoyed a lot of sports. And then it wasn't until probably middle school I started focusing more on basketball and really enjoyed it.
He and his twin brothers were hell on wheels at Nanaimo. He had ability, intelligence, and character. And those are the three elements that are necessary for someone to excel.
At the end of grade 11, my high school coach said, you know, Gerald, and I was very shy, he said, Gerald, you should maybe think down the road playing in the Olympics. And that kind of, wow, you know, and I put that in the back of my mind, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to play in the Olympics, and I just had that dream. I have a lot of fond memories here at UVic. We had some great talent, and we had a lot of trust. When the games come, we had a lot of trust that we just focus on what each of us had to do, and we knew we'd be successful.
We had a tremendous amount of fun in getting satisfaction of performing at a high level and competing fiercely. And our practices were intense. Everything about us was competitive, and there was a great enjoyment. Even Gerald and I sat together on the plane and played cards, and it was all, we had tremendous amounts of fun. We knew that he would be a national team player. I could see that he had all the elements.
84 Olympics, played against Jordan. 83 World University Games, we actually beat Karl Malone and Charles Barkley in Edmonton. And then with Ken Shields at the helm in the 92 pre-Olympics, we played against the U.S. Dream Team. And you know, we just had to hope they were off and we played at the top. There was no other scouting report available. So I really appreciate being able to play against the top in the world.
There's no doubt in my mind that both he and Eli would have been in the NBA if it were in modern times. I would trust him with anything. He is one quality individual.
I was born and raised in Victoria, and started my school years at Monterey Elementary School in Oak Bay. Then ultimately got involved in the Victoria Lawn Tennis Club, and there was lots of beginning tournaments to get involved in, and I won my first, I think, tournament at Strathcona Park. And that was the start of my career, really. I just kept playing and playing and got better and better.
I had been identified as one of the young players invited to the weekend training that they had started there, and Bob was the top player in the province at the time, and he was the first individual and only individual to see something in me that he thought would lead to maybe better things down the road. And a year later, I won my first national title. I won the Under-14 Nationals, and the first phone call that I received was from Bob Moffat.
The administration really started at Tennis BC, and I first of all became the first executive director of Tennis BC. I ended up being invited to take a look at the position of executive director of Tennis Canada.
Much of the success that Canada now enjoys in tennis, a lot of those building blocks were put in place in those key years with Bob as president, and Bob became involved with the initial visioning of creating Piscine, and then became its first general manager.
It was just a huge opportunity, I thought, to be involved in what really is a world-class facility. And we can see today that what Piscine is doing, both on the local level, the community level, provincial level, the national level, and even international. The number of athletes that train here and come out of the facility is truly a remarkable testament to the initial work that was done.
But I think that Bob's greatest legacy is the building of human beings and the leaders that we have in sport in this country. To me, that's the greatest legacy of what a builder is, because that legacy carries on forever.
So there you have it, some amazing local athletes. Congratulations to all of them. And obviously, Lois, we want to encourage people to come on down to the Sports Hall of Fame.
Yes, entrance is free through Gate 3 on any time during the daytime, and we'd like to encourage families to come down and have a look at the displays and exhibits and just see what is achievable in this wonderful city.
Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
That'll do it for this edition of VI Sports. I'm Mark Robertson. We'll see you next time.